All right, let's be real. How many times have you talked about starting a business or starting a side hustle or some dream that you've had, and you're like, oh, I'm going to do it today. Oh, nope, ran out of time. I'm going to do it tomorrow. No, I've got a little motivation today. I'm going to go for it. There's a mindset process that we all go through. I found this in myself. What has made me move forward in all of the big decisions, big goals in my life that helped me get past that starting point. So that's what we're going to dive into today. All right, so first, let's talk about our mindset. We all have this point where we think, I've got everything all set up. I know this really well as a perfectionist. We're waiting for that magical moment where we all of a sudden just kick off and here it goes and we get past the starting point on our big dream goal, whatever it is. But here's the thing, ask yourself honestly, when has anything in your life gone perfectly, where every step is perfectly laid out so you can begin? And there's just a completely smooth transition. That's not realistic. That's never happened to me. Realistically, what happens is it's the process of starting and then getting into the mess and the trial and error where you begin to learn. There is no perfect time to start anything. The perfect time to start is now, whenever you start. But let's take that further. That's where you have to commit. It's about committing to doing something. It's sort of like losing weight. If I want to end up losing some weight or begin exercising, I have to commit to it and actually just take that first step. And it's going to be a messy process as you begin. You're going to be sore, you're going to be tired, you're going to have to get all your muscle memory back in place. But for me, getting my mindset right was letting go of perfectionism. Every time I get stuck in that trap, I'm like, this thing's got to be just right. This thing's got to be just right. And I just keep spinning my wheels in the same spot. Let me be honest, these YouTube videos, as I've been getting into these, I've watched so many videos about how to do it just right. Lighting, script, no script, hooks, all this stuff. And again, it has completely stopped me from actually making progress. Getting your mindset right means letting go of the idea of everything will have to be just right, or I'd like to get these things ready first. No, it is about committing and just getting into the mess of learning and making progress. All right, now that we got the mindset right, I want to introduce you to a super simple concept I came up with, which is this idea of ready, set, grow. I'm sure no one has ever come up with that before. It's pretty original to me, so please don't copyright that. We get the idea of something growing incrementally over time, but I want to kind of dive into breaking up something like starting a business into that three-step process. So the ready is what we're talking about first getting your mindset right. Ready is the phase where you're coming up with ideas, you're getting motivated, you're starting to have a belief that maybe I could do this. Maybe I could actually own my own business. Maybe I could make money from home. So during this phase of getting ready, you'd be thinking about things like, what would my business name be? What type of niche. I'm more of a niche. You're looking into local business laws, thinking about things like, do I need insurance for this business? Are there any permits or licenses I need to do this? What about taxes? How do I pay taxes for this? So your mindset is getting ready, but you got to break through some of those things, like mentioned before, the idea of perfectionism, the fears of failure. So that phase is really rocky. Sorry, there's a cat in my office right now. So we're talking about how do you get started. So we're in the ready phase. We've got tons of ideas. We're dreaming. We have goals that we want to reach. A couple of important things to start. Make this a little bit easier to get moving. One is write down those goals. Give yourself some incremental steps that are small, that are actually attainable. Now you've got a bit of a structure to work with. The next part is you got to commit to this plan. So how do you do that? Well, again, I've watched those motivational videos like you, and they don't keep me motivated for probably more than like a day or maybe a day at the most. And by the next morning, that motivation's gone. And I'm right back to my vices. So how do you get past this? I suggest activating that reward center of your brain. Give yourself incentives to reach that next goal. Write down something fun you're going to do or something you enjoy doing. I don't know, maybe it's playing a video game, reading a book, going to a movie, hanging out with a friend. It doesn't matter, whatever it is, give yourself a little reward and work towards that. and keep that reward in mind. And when you complete that goal, sit in it just for a moment, just to feel satisfied, like celebrate those little wins. Because if you don't, then you keep moving forward and you start to hit that point where you lose motivation because there's really no reward to it yet. That reward is still so far down the road that you're not enjoying this process. Life happens on the journey towards your goals. And remember to enjoy the journey. I know that sounds a little cheesy, but it's serious. All of the moments, the important things, they happen in that process, the learning, the ups and downs. You climb a tree as a kid, you fall out of a tree, you learn a lesson, you get better at it next time. It's the same thing with starting this business. Remember that even as you're beginning, part of that journey, and it should be enjoyed, is going to be the trial and error, the making mistakes along the way. In fact, it's important to just let yourself make mistakes. I created my first video on YouTube here because I had such a hard time getting over all my fears with it. And then eventually I thought, you know what? I just need to create one video, just get past that first step where it's awkward and weird, and it'll still be awkward and weird for a while. So again, I want you to also envision that part where, hey, it's going to get a little easier. So anything you're doing that feels difficult at first, just remember, in 1 month from now, how am I going to feel about this? In fact, I encourage you to write that down. For instance, did you ever see the video that Mr. Beast put out? One of his first videos where he kind of told himself some of the dreams he had for his future. I thought that was really neat to show that to the world. Because again, it's so interesting to look at ourselves from a few years ago and then realize how far we've come. But the point is we all need to set goals. Otherwise, we just don't move forward in life. The other thing I would recommend is when you're committing to this, it's important to tell the right people so that you have some accountability for this. Now, I say tell the right people because there are some people that'll hear your idea and they're just going to discourage you. And they're just going to think, why are you doing that? Honestly, sometimes it's because they don't have any motivation to do anything like that themselves and they feel a little jealous inside. I'm speaking to that because I know I've been there too. When I see someone doing something big and I'm thinking, oh, I wish I had the motivation to do something big. So again, often they're not doing it out of a bad intent. It's just more so that their mindset has not opened up to that. So tell the right people who will be an encouragement. Find someone who has already started a business. Find someone who's a couple steps ahead of you. Talk to those people. They're going to get it. They'll understand and they'll be excited for you. So here's an action item. Write down up to 3 things. I don't care how many it is, but literally write down on a piece of paper because that activates something in our mind that actually prompts us to take action where you can tangibly mark it off and write down 3 actionable steps, super simple little steps that could help you move forward in your goal of starting a business. Keep them simple. Once you accomplish them, check them off until you get those 3 things marked off. That is helping you incrementally just move past those difficult first phases of accomplishing something. Again, think of the snowball effect. And once you have momentum, you know what happens after that. All right, step 2 is the set phase. Well, now you're taking action. You're moving forward. So you got to set up your business. Now, a lot of people get stuck at this phase because they're thinking, there's a lot of things to do and I don't quite know where to begin. So let me make this easy on you. So start with just the basics of brand. That's going to be a logo. That's going to be a general color scheme. That's going to be even fonts that you use on all your marketing materials. Honestly, those 3, if you start there, that is the most basics but important pieces of a brand style guide that you need just to start establishing a look that is consistent across all different platforms and as you move forward. Obviously, you can change that in the future, but you got to start somewhere. The next piece to start thinking about is a marketing strategy. And when I say that, it doesn't need to sound as intimidating as it sounds. Some people do spend tens of thousands of dollars on very complex marketing strategies. If we're talking about starting a business, we have to just simply establish if I'm selling a service or a product or whatever that may be, how do I intend to get those first few sales out the door? How do I intend to earn that first, $50, whatever it is, whatever your starting point is? Could I write down like 10 to 20 people that I know who may just want to know about the service that I'm offering? I know that may sound overly simple, but honestly, for me starting my own business in web design like 20 years ago, that was how I got my start. And that's how many people I talk to today are still getting their start is they just make a list of people they know and they think about, could I tell them, certainly in a non-salesy, awkward way, that, hey, I'm offering this service or product. Some people are super excited to want to help you. Also, some of these people have businesses of their own, or they know people who have other businesses, or they know a friend of a friend who has a business that could use your product or service. You have to ask if you want to receive. It's It's a very simple concept and lesson, but I've learned that the hard way. A lot of times I'm like, why isn't this thing working? Or why am I not getting this thing, whatever it may be? Well, the problem is I've never asked anyone. I've never asked specifically. No one will know until you ask. But then take that marketing strategy further. Once you get past asking those 10 to 20 people, it might sound old school. Make some business cards just so if you're physically talking with someone, they can actually remember. Sure, they'll probably throw it in the garbage later, but whatever. They'll remember who you are, at least maybe enough to go check out your website or, send you an email or give you a call. Which leads me to my next point, which is you have to build a website. Now, obviously, I'm a web designer, web developer, online marketing specialist, so that's going to be, of course, what I would say to do next. But again, your website serves as sort of the one thing that no one can take from you. If you set yourself up on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, any of those, that is great for building an audience. But they can be taken away for you. They can be demonetized. They can ban you. They can do all sorts of things, make changes to their algorithm where all of a sudden it affects your business. Your base for building your business is going to be your website. Now, I do highly recommend beyond that is you begin creating a newsletter, because that is also a second audience beyond your website that you can grow and that it can't really be taken away from you. Certainly not very easily. So when you're thinking about setting up your website, we're talking basic site. You've chosen the domain name, yourbusiness.com. I'd highly recommend purchasing that through Namecheap. That's the one I use all the time. They're inexpensive. And then you have to establish web hosting. Where do the files, the database for this site live? Now, you can find some free hosts or super cheap hosts. I've used many of them. But I do highly recommend if you're setting up a business that you want to grow over time, you don't want to have to worry about the hassles of the site going down or getting hacked or any of that stuff that you don't really have the time to focus on, but you also want a platform you can build on. I would highly recommend Kinsta. They're my favorite. In fact, I host my website on them as well. No, this video is not sponsored by them, and I have no problem recommending them because I know from having used probably 30, 40 plus different web hosts over the 20 plus years I've been doing this, it's not that there aren't some good web hosts out there, but until you run into the issues of scalability, speed issues are a big one, security issues, and you realize how much this ends up costing you and the time you have to put into it, that's where you finally realize, oh, it was probably more important that I just paid for a better host to begin with. Kinsta is definitely the one I recommend. Plus, they'll just give you WordPress installed right out of the gate, which leads me into my next part, which is I would highly recommend using WordPress to build your site. Yes, there's Squarespace, Wix, all those. There's things like Hostinger, which will automatically build your site. GoDaddy has an AI builder. There's a lot of them out there. These tools could certainly get you going, but long term, they're not going to be the foundation that you're going to want to build your business on long term. I have tried out so many different things over the years, spent so much money. Let me just spare you this. Choose a solid domain name provider like Namecheap. Choose a solid managed WordPress host like Kinsta, and then build your site on WordPress. I highly recommend using a tool like Elementor, which is a website builder. They do have a pro version. I mean, realistically, you can totally get started on the free version. I do have a link to Elementor as well if you want to look at that below. That combo of those three would set you up with a business site that you could bring to a web developer like myself in the future. If you're like, I can't even manage this once you get it started, they would be appreciative that you've started on a really solid foundation that you can get years out of to come. So this is the set phase. And again, I want to help you move past that starting point in this phase where you're getting some things established so that people can see you are a legitimate business, that you actually have a plan, and you actually have a goal of how you're going to help people and serve them well. So the last phase of this process is the growth phase. So your business, you've moved forward in the idea of what you want to do. So at this point, you've established getting past some starting points. You've got some milestones you can look back on. That's part of your fuel for moving forward. So now in the grow phase, you're starting to think about, okay, how do I get 3 clients? How do I get 5 clients? How do I make $1,000 this month? How do I make $5,000 this month? How do I make well over $100,000 this year? Your goals are getting bigger at this point. But with each one of those, you still have to start So this is where I want to help you establish not just the habit of starting, but also having sort of your own routine of how you start different milestones, how you start goals. Again, the challenge is when you set a really high goal and you can't break down those steps in between. Realistically, most people, myself included, we're not going to reach those goals because it just seems so far away. Ideally, you've got some traction now where you've been able to start different things in your business. You've accomplished little goals. Build on that. Create your own routine for just accomplishing little things. So set your next goal, which is how many clients you want to have by the end of the month. Maybe it's a monetary goal, whatever it is. Set that goal and then start really small and establish that routine. It's all about the process. And all of a sudden, before you know it, you're going to be able to start things much faster. You're going to be able to stay consistent with them. The business will grow because of your habits and your ability to stay focused and to actually start and not get stuck in that cycle of spinning your wheels. And even if you go down a wrong path, which we all do, you're going to be able to get right back on track and keep starting because you've established your routine and your rhythm for accomplishing things. So again, I remind you, wherever you're at today, the biggest reason people don't reach their goals, they don't start a business, they don't start a side hustle, is because they don't start. You don't need a huge following. You don't need to have everything perfectly established. All you have to do is establish the routine of starting and be okay with the mess and recognize that that's part of this whole journey. Once you get past those initial few starting phases, you're going to get some momentum going and that ball is going to start rolling faster and faster. And that's where it gets exciting. So I encourage you at this point, before you wander off and watch some other YouTube video, don't even watch another one of mine. I don't care. I want you to actually do something. I want you to pause this video, close all your distractions, your browser, write down those 3 things. What are 3 actionable steps you can take to actually get started on your goals? So what will you do with these 24 hours that you've been given?